All right, so in our last assignment, we learned about variables and setting them and then using them in the output. And we're going to continue doing this throughout the semester, where we set a variable. Sometimes we manipulate what value the variable is storing, and then we usually use it in some way, either to report back to the user or to calculate something else. So here I've got two variables. One's called x and one's called y. And we just set their original or their initial values as 2 and 3. You'll notice that if I print x, it tells me that the value of x is 2. If I print y, then it just tells me the value is 3. And so that's not very exciting because the computer program isn't changing the values of them. It's just storing the value and then reporting it back to us. One thing that we can do is actually start to manipulate them. So in this line, what I'm doing is I'm adding of the variable x and y together and then printing whatever their sum is. So if we run this program, now it is a different value than 2 or 3 because it's the sum of 2 and 3 added up together. And so still, this is somewhat boring, right? A calculator could do this because we're not taking any input or any interaction from the user. All we're doing is we're setting these two variables as some numbers and then adding them together. So it becomes a lot more exciting when we actually take input from the user. Now down here, I've got a variable called first, and this is interesting because when we name variables, it's useful to us as a programmer to actually call it what it is, to be detailed in its name, so that then when we're writing the program, we can kind of follow through what is this variable supposed to be doing. Whereas up above, we had a variable x and y. Those are pretty vague, and so we might lose track of what they mean. So here, if I print the first variable, all right, what it's storing is my first name, and a lot of students in our last project did something similar to this, where they just put their first name as the value to a variable. But what's much more interesting is when we actually ask the user to give us input. And so here we're setting the value of the first variable to whatever the user types. And we're going to ask the user, what is your first name? Then they're going to type it, and then we're going to save that as the first variable. So if we run this, now if I say my first name is John, it actually saves John as my first name. And you'll see that by setting a variable once and then a second time, this actually kind of rewrites or saves over what the variable used to be. So even though the first variable started with the value of Zach, when I typed in John here, that John was then saved as that variable and Zach kind of went away. So this is a little bit more interesting because now at least the user gets to interact with the program, and whatever information that they provide, we can actually incorporate into our program and we can save. But we're just reporting it back, right? We're just kind of a parrot giving the same information they typed back to them. So down here in this third and final example, what we'll do is we'll ask the user for their age, and then we'll use that number and we'll calculate something with it. So if you look here, the first line says whatever the person types when the computer asks them how old they are. Notice that we're asking them for a number, not for text. And that's very important because then we're going to take whatever they type, which we're saving as the variable age. We're going to add 3 to it, and we're going to save that new number as new age. Then we're going to print out in 3 years, you will be whatever that sum is with the added number, years old. And so we'll see how this runs. How old are you? I am 28. In 3 years, you will be 31 years old. And so this is really the power that we're going to try to leverage in this class, where we're asking the user for input and we're saving that input as a variable. And then we're taking that variable and we're using it. We can manipulate it with mathematics or with some string manipulation. And then we're using that in the output back to the user to calculate something that's more interesting or complex. Thank you for watching.